The quietest move you'll ever make will be the one that changes everything. They won't see it coming. Not because you're hiding, but because you finally stopped explaining. You've spent too long announcing your goals, waiting for support, chasing validation. And for what? Distraction, doubt, delay. But now, you vanish. Not to disappear forever, but to reappear as something they no longer recognize. This is where the real work begins. No more applause, no more updates, just silence. And inside that silence, something starts to grow. Something powerful. Focus, obsession, discipline. This is the version of you they never prepared for. The version they won't be able to stop once it starts. You don't need to be loud to be unstoppable. You just need to be done talking. And that's exactly where we begin.
Silence is your first weapon. There comes a point where you realize that the more you speak, the more you drain your power. Every time you explain yourself, every time you share your next move, your plans, your progress, you open the door for noise to creep in. You give people access to something they don't understand, something they haven't earned the right to see. And slowly, their opinions, their reactions, their doubts begin to weigh on you. Not all at once, but in quiet ways. A comment here, a look there, a pause in the conversation that leaves you second-guessing yourself. And that's how you start leaking energy. That's how your momentum gets diluted before it even begins. So you stop. You choose silence, not the kind that isolates you, but the kind that strengthens you. You stop announcing what you're about to do. You stop explaining your vision to people who were never going to support it. You pull back from the need to be understood, and you lean into the discipline of keeping things to yourself. In the beginning, it's uncomfortable. The silence feels strange. You'll catch yourself wanting to tell someone, wanting to hear some validation, some encouragement. But over time, you realize the silence is where your focus sharpens. It's where your intentions harden. It's where your energy, instead of leaking out into 100 different conversations, stays inside and starts to build. You begin to operate differently. You become more direct, more calculated, more steady. And the less you say, the more you realize how much you used to give away for free. People will notice something's changed. They'll ask what you're working on. You'll give them nothing. They'll sense your distance, your restraint, and they won't know why. Let them wonder. That space between their curiosity and your silence is where you grow. That gap is your advantage. The world cannot interfere with what it cannot see. And when there's nothing to chase, nothing to mock, nothing to judge, there's nothing holding you back. You're not hiding, you're building. You're not avoiding people, you're choosing yourself. Because silence isn't weakness, it's protection. It's where your real transformation begins. And by the time they realize how far you've gone, it'll already be done. Once you've embraced the silence, something else begins to surface. Your own voice. Not the version that's been filtered for social approval or shaped by years of being polite and agreeable. The real voice. The one you've buried under layers of opinions, expectations, and fear. It starts quiet, almost unfamiliar. But when everything else goes quiet, when you stop reporting your every move to the world, that voice grows louder. It becomes clearer. And suddenly, you can hear the truth. You begin to notice how much of your life has been guided by what other people might think. Decisions made out of fear of judgment. Dreams watered down to make them more acceptable. Potential choked out by the need to be liked. And now, for the first time, that noise is gone. You don't look for their approval anymore. You start looking inward. You begin to hold yourself to a different standard, one that's yours. You ask yourself if the person you're trying to become would respect the actions you took today. And if the answer is no, you fix it. You adjust, not for them, but for you. Because now your voice is the only one that matters. You no longer need people to agree with you. You don't need them to understand. You don't even need them to notice. That need used to run your life, but not anymore. Now you wake up with a different kind of accountability, one that isn't about consequences but about alignment. You want your actions to match your intention. You want your words to reflect your values, and you want your growth to feel like it belongs to you, not anyone else. You've stopped asking for permission. You've stopped waiting for someone to validate the direction you're heading. You've taken ownership. And in doing that, you've stepped into a place where you no longer need noise to feel real. You just need progress. As you start to make progress, a dangerous feeling creeps in. Excitement. And with it comes the urge to share. You feel proud of the vision forming in your mind. You want someone to know how hard you're working, how clear the path is becoming. But here's where most people slip. They confuse excitement for readiness. They speak before the foundation is even laid. And what happens? Doubt enters the room. Skepticism finds cracks in your voice. Even well-meaning encouragement can change the shape of your vision before it's ready to stand. That's why you keep your blueprint hidden. You treat your goals like they're sacred, not fragile, but sacred. The more you protect them, the stronger they grow. Every plan, every detail, every tiny breakthrough, you hold it close. You stop over-explaining. You stop giving previews. You don't need to prove that you're working, you just work. And when someone asks, you don't offer a detailed answer. You give them less than they expect. Not out of arrogance, but out of discipline. You understand now that leaking your vision weakens it. You've stopped looking for applause during construction. You've accepted that the world doesn't get to see what you're building until it's complete. And when you need help, you ask selectively. You don't broadcast the whole plan just to get one answer. You extract what you need and move on. Everything else stays sealed. Because you know now that clarity doesn't come from talking, it comes from doing. And you're done talking. You're done sharing half-finished thoughts with people who've never finished anything themselves. This is your process, and you're guarding it like a vault. The grind becomes addicting. Not because of the results, not yet, but because of what it does to you. You start seeing the changes, not just in your routine, but in your mind. You're stronger, quieter, more dangerous. But as the results build, so does temptation. Temptation to post, to share, to finally let someone see how far you've come. And that's when you catch yourself. You remember why you started in silence in the first place. You remember how fragile progress can be when exposed too early. So you keep it to yourself. Every win, every inch forward, it stays yours. You don't celebrate publicly. You let the feeling of improvement live quietly inside you. You learn to feed off the grind, not the attention. You build momentum not by being seen, but by staying obsessed. You wake up thinking about your goals. You go to sleep with them etched into your thoughts. It becomes routine, not the boring kind, but the kind that keeps you grounded. And the best part? You don't need a single person to recognize it. You don't need applause. You've trained your brain to crave growth, not likes. And over time, that changes everything. The world goes on, unaware of the monster you're becoming behind closed doors. And you let them stay unaware, because now you understand that true transformation doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be done. There are going to be days that feel like failure, days where everything breaks, when nothing you planned works, and the progress you fought for disappears in a moment. You'll feel tired, isolated, overwhelmed, and the first instinct is to reach out, to vent, to get some comfort, to let someone know how hard it's been. But you won't, because you've committed to something deeper than relief. You've committed to becoming someone who can carry weight without dropping it. So you carry it, alone. You wipe the sweat, you feel the pain, you scream into the dark, but you don't open the door. You learn how to patch your own wounds, how to breathe through it, how to keep moving forward even when no one sees the effort. And something incredible happens in that place. You get tougher, not the surface-level toughness people pretend to have. Real resilience, the kind that doesn't flinch, the kind that doesn't break when it bends. And every time you survive another setback without collapsing, your capacity expands. You become the kind of person who doesn't just go through pain, but grows through it. And that strength is unmistakable. Even if no one else sees it, you feel it. You carry it in your posture, your choices, your silence. And eventually, that strength starts speaking for you, loudly, clearly, without needing a single word. Now you've built endurance. You've trained yourself to move in silence, to trust yourself, to suffer without seeking sympathy. But all of that means nothing if your focus is scattered. This is where you tighten the vision. You don't just want growth, you want something specific, something tangible, something real. So you choose the target, you define it, you name it, you visualize it so clearly that nothing else even looks interesting. You build your life around that outcome. You change your environment to make it easier. You remove anything that slows you down. If it doesn't help you get closer, it's a distraction. If it takes your energy and doesn't return anything useful, it's gone. This is where your discipline becomes ruthless. You stop entertaining plans that sound cool but lead nowhere. You stop chasing 10 things and start pursuing one. You don't need variety. You need results. You don't need comfort. You need clarity. And once that target is locked in, you align your time, your habits, your energy around it. You know exactly where you're going, and that makes every decision easier. You're not just working hard anymore, you're working smart. And when your focus sharpens, your results accelerate. The world tells you to find balance, to avoid burnout, to take it slow. But you're not here to coast. You're here to change. And change demands obsession. Not the kind that burns out in a week, but the kind that transforms your entire lifestyle. You think about your goal constantly. You see everything through the lens of whether it moves you forward or holds you back. Your schedule, your choices, your time, it all orbits around that target. You become intentional with every hour. You start saying no more often. You become difficult to distract. People may not understand it, but that's not your concern. You're not trying to fit in. You're trying to break through. And to do that, you need to live differently. You need to outwork, outlast, and outfocus everyone around you. Obsession isn't a weakness, it's your edge. It's what turns good intentions into actual transformation. And when you finally lock into that mindset, there's nothing casual about how you live. There's only purpose. And purpose doesn't get tired, it gets stronger. Somewhere along the way, you stop craving what you used to. Comfort doesn't feel like peace anymore. It feels like delay. You start associating challenge with purpose. You start finding joy in the pain. Not because you love suffering, but because you know what it leads to. Every moment of discipline, every lonely night, every sacrifice, it all starts to feel meaningful. You stop needing external rewards to feel fulfilled. The process becomes the reward. The solitude becomes your sanctuary. You find clarity in the discomfort, and what used to feel like pressure now feels like purpose. You don't need to escape anymore. You don't need distractions to feel alive. You just need progress. And that becomes the greatest piece of all. By the time you're ready to show the world who you've become, you'll realize something unexpected. You don't need to. You no longer crave the spotlight. You no longer need the approval. You've already built everything you were chasing. In silence, in focus, in pain. And now, you've become someone unrecognizable, not because of attention, but because of transformation. You're no longer trying to prove anything. You are the proof. And even if they don't see it coming, they'll feel it. Because you've become the ghost they can't forget, the one who disappeared, rebuilt, and returned as something they never saw coming. Not loud, not flashy, just undeniable.